Hi, I'm Ashley Cook, and I am a state transformation specialist with the Office of Special Education and Early Learning. And I'm presenting today with Amanda on tools and resources districts are using to improve mathematics outcomes.
Hi, my name is Amanda Waldrop. I'm the Assistant Director at the Division of IDEA Implementation in Preschool.
So, what we're going to do in this recording is learn more about the Kentucky Mathematics tool to support students with disabilities. We're going to learn how items in the toolkit have impacted improved student outcomes. And we'll spend a little time to better understand Indicator 17 and the State Systemic Improvement Plan, or the SSIP, transformation zones, or TZs. So before the tools within the Mathematics Toolkit were developed, these 8 mathematics teaching practices from the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, or NCTM, were identified as effective math teaching practices, and these are what those tools were built around. Each of these practices is research informed to be effective in any setting and with any grade level. If you take a moment to look over the practices, you'll likely be able to identify several you or the math teachers in your district are already using. So in using these practices, the goal is to take what is already happening in the classroom and make small adjustments that will make teaching more effective for learners. If you follow the QR code or the link that is available on this slide, you can read more about how the NCTM identified these practices and learn what actions you can take to help the implementation of these practices. So we wanted to share with you some outcome data from the use of these practices. What we see here is on those blue striped bars, that is a non-transformation zone school. So that means a school that had not been using the practices identified in the toolkit. And then the green bar is from transformation zone schools, or TZ schools, that committed to using those practices um, along with a fidelity walkthrough tool to inform the system of support for teachers beginning in 2016, and they were continuing that work through 2019. And so as we look at these data, what we notice is in that novice category, our non-TZ school, they saw a slight increase for students with disabilities between third and fifth grade in the novice category, whereas the transformation zone schools saw a pretty significant decrease in the percentage of students performing novice. When we look at the apprentice category, the non-TZ school had a decrease where the TZ school had an increase. And of course, apprentice is a little bit of a more complicated category to consider, since we don't know, was the increase that students went from novice to apprentice or from proficient to distinguished, but we did see that increase in the TZ school. And then we look at the proficient and distinguished category, we see that from 2015 to 2016, to comparing that to the 2018-2019 outcome data, both the non-TZ school and the TZ schools had an increase, but that one we see in the TZ schools is a bit more significant, from 21% to 30%. So this data is from a quasi-experimental research design, and it was just published in 2021, looking at these effective practices in the classroom and the impact they may have on student outcome data. So we wanted to take a little time to also look at some data that's accessible to those of us who don't have a research team. And so we're looking here at comparing Kentucky's math scores again. We're looking at just the proficient and distinguished categories this time. In our left-hand group of scores, that is looking at statewide math scores. And in both graphs, we are looking at the blue with the white dots is 2017-18 third graders, and the orange is 2018-19 fourth graders. And so we looked at these because we want to see, trying to compare a cohort of students. We know that not all students from 2017-18 to 2018-19 would still be in the same cohort, but it gives us a good general idea. And so what we saw statewide in math scores was in third graders in 2017-18, 47% were scoring proficient. And then as fourth graders, that cohort of students were scoring 46% were proficient distinguished. When we look at students with disabilities, we see that those students stayed roughly the same. There actually was a small decrease between 17, 18, and 18, 19, but it would round it to the same number. And then in our right-hand set of graphs, we're looking at a comparison school. So this is one transformation zone school that began this work in 2017, and the district has started in 2015. And so what we see is from 2017-18, third graders to those same students, or roughly same students as fourth graders in 2018-19, they saw an increase to 45% of students were scoring proficient. So they almost caught the state average. When we look at our students with disabilities from that school, we see that they went from 23% proficiency to 32%, which surpassed that state average for those years.
All right, so now I'm going to share with you a little bit about the mathematics toolkit to support students with disabilities. And this particular toolkit incorporates the practices that Ashley shared earlier from the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. Within the toolkit, there's the Kentucky Mathematics Innovation Practice Profile, which we'll show you in just a moment, as well as the Kentucky Mathematics Innovation Tool. And you can access the toolkit at the QR code that's on the screen or by typing in the link that is also available on the screen. So now we're going to share with you the toolkit and show you the tools that are available within it. So first, if you scroll down within the toolkit, you'll see there's the table of contents that just kind of gives you a quick overview of what's in it. And then there's an overview section of the State Systemic Improvement Plan, which we'll share with you a little bit more about later. But that just gives you really the foundation for the work and how the work came about in terms of the development of the Kentucky Mathematics Toolkit. And then next we have the Kentucky Mathematics Innovation Practice Profile. And so what this practice profile does is it really helps to clearly define and operationalize what does good quality mathematics instruction look like. The practice profile was developed with a representative group of stakeholders from across Kentucky. So they're the ones that help to design and develop this. And it is also based off of the 8 mathematics teaching practices from the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. And so within the practice profile, you can see the blue bar across the top of the rows or the table that's on the screen. That is the actual teaching practice. And so those are each of those National Council of Teachers of Mathematics teaching practices. And those, so that's really just your high level, what are the foundations in terms of what does good quality mathematics instruction look like? And then you'll see to the left, there's the definition of what does that practice mean. And then there are columns where you see accomplished, developmental, and ineffective use in terms of what do those practices look like if you were to observe them. So those are the observable behaviors in terms of what do those practices look like in use within the classroom. So the practice profile can be used for the content for training or for professional learning communities, can use this as a resource to just have conversations around high quality mathematics instruction. It can also be used as a tool for teachers in terms of incorporating instructional strategies within lessons to help foster a deeper understanding of mathematics. It could also be used as a self-reflection for practices within the classroom, and it can be used to have guide conversations with coaching as well around the mathematics teaching practices. So next we have the practice guides. So this really just helps to provide a little bit more information about each of the 8 mathematics teaching practices. So there's a practice guide for each one of them. And with the practice guides, it includes the teaching practice at the top. It also includes, strategies that can be used to help support students with disabilities. And there's also a digital learning experience column as well in terms of how did those strategies translate to a virtual learning experience. And then there's also some reflection questions as well that teachers can help use when they're planning their lessons and incorporating these strategies within their lessons. And then next we have the Kentucky Mathematics Innovation Tool. And so what this tool really can be used for is measuring the 8 mathematics teaching practices in the classroom. So it is aligned to the practice profile as well as the practice guides. It incorporates each of those 8 mathematics teaching practices and includes a lot of the observational behaviors that are in the practice profile. And so the KMIT is a 20-minute observation of instruction based on those practices. And it can be used as a walkthrough instrument, and it can be conducted during any time during a lesson. And one thing with the KMIT is just to help, then you can see there's some additional information in terms of how to use it, how it breaks it down, but there's, so the what, who, and the how in terms of the use of it. And there's also some information within the KMIT as well in terms of how to score the items. So you can see the scoring there. A 2 on the KMIT is fully observed, 1 is partially observed, 0 is not observed, and NA is not observed, but there's not an opportunity to see it. And so there's specific instructions in terms of, how to determine whether it's a 2, a 1, a 0, or an NA for the scoring of the KMIT. And so if you have any questions or interested in any training on the KMIT or learning more about that, you're welcome to contact myself or Ashley Cook or Veronica Sullivan. And you'll see Veronica's email address is within the toolkit, and then you'll see my contact information as well as Ashley's at the end of the recording.
So Amanda gave us a really nice overview of those tools. And so what I would like to share now is more about how these tools are used in schools. And so they are used within a training and coaching cycle. Um, you know, Amanda mentioned that the Kentucky Mathematics Innovation Tool, or the KMIT, is non-evaluative. So these tools are not intended to in any way evaluate teachers, but to inform the system of support to ensure these effective practices are being used in the classroom. So this is a sample of what a training and coaching cycle may look like. Of course, we know with cycles, you can sort of hop in at any point, but for the purposes of today, we'll be starting with a fidelity observation as step 1. So using the KMIT, we conduct non-evaluative classroom observations. Following those is data analysis and goal setting. So teams come together, and these teams typically include teachers, and they're going to analyze the observation data in aggregate. Again, it's not about what a specific teacher is doing, it's about what the system is providing for students. So looking at that data in aggregate, a growth area is identified, and then a goal is set. From that goal, training is identified that teachers may need. So they receive that training on how to implement in the classroom. Then they have time to practice implementing with their classes. They might work in PLCs or professional learning communities to talk about how they'll include it in their classrooms effectively. And then teachers can receive coaching on implementation of the practice. This can look different ways. Sometimes it is just a conversation of coaching. Sometimes it's a short observation with feedback, or it could even be the coach modeling for the teacher how to implement the practice. And then, of course, being a cycle, it just continues again. Um, so I spoke to this in the context of the KMIT. However, this can be used with any practice, and is a great way to ensure teachers are receiving the training and coaching that they need to support student learning. So in this work, we have been working in transformation zones, or small slices of the system. So within these zones, um, supports are provided by Kentucky Department of Education and the K-E Special Education Regional Cooperatives, also called surtacs, or your local co-op. So people in the TZ receive training and coaching on implementation science and evidence-based practices. And they also receive assistance in collecting and responding to data to make valid educational decisions, and receive support to develop processes for any future initiative. So working in the transformation zones, um, the long-term goal is to develop a system that can then incorporate other connections. So getting really good at the training and coaching cycles, using implementation science within your system, and then scaling those evidence-based practices across other content areas as well. So in Kentucky, we've been doing this work um, with a national partner. And during the June 2022 State Implementation and Scaling Up of Evidence-Based Practices Active States Forum, we were honored for showing how implementation science can be used to make a difference for students. Specifically, that data we shared earlier, showing the outcome data for students. And additionally, we have been used as a national model for how a linked teaming structure between the state, region, district, schools, and teachers is critical to building systemic change.
And so all the work that we've shared with you today comes from the State Systemic Improvement Plan, or Indicator 17 of the State Performance Plan and Annual Performance Report. And so the SIP for short is it's a comprehensive multi-year plan that comes from the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Special Education Programs. And so really, as part of the SIP, states are charged with developing a plan to improve educational outcomes for students with disabilities. And so states conduct a data and infrastructure analysis to determine an area of focus and a goal that they want to accomplish, as well as a plan for how we're going to achieve that goal. And then we also have to evaluate our progress towards meeting that goal. And so for Kentucky, we gathered a representative group of stakeholders together to determine our area of focus based on data. And so the area of focus for Kentucky is on the screen here, which is called our state identified measurable result. And so Kentucky state identified measurable result is to increase the percentage of students with disabilities performing at or above proficient in middle school math, specifically at the 8th grade level. And so the reason for selecting the 8th grade level is when we conducted a data and infrastructure analysis, that was an area that we noticed that we needed some additional support on. We also selected 8th grade as well because that's an indicator of dropout. So that can also help to support indicators 1 and 2 of the state performance plan and annual performance report. Also, as part of the SIP, we want to provide an emphasis on reducing novice performance because we know we have to reduce novice first before we can accomplish proficiency. And so we're going to do this by providing professional learning, technical assistance, and support. So that we're going to be supporting elementary and middle school teachers around implementing, scaling, and sustaining positive behavioral interventions and supports and evidence-based practices in math. And so the state identified measurable result really helps to support several indicators within the SPP APR. As I mentioned earlier, indicator 1 and 2, high school graduation and dropout. And this can also help to support indicator 14 in terms of transition, post-school transition, and as well as, ensuring that students are prepared in mathematics once they graduate. And so if you would like more information about the State Systemic Improvement Plan, or if you're interested in becoming a transformation zone, if you use the QR code or if you type in the link, that'll provide you, or that'll take you to a Google form where we can collect some information to help get in touch with you about the transformation zone. So feel free to access that information if you would like to learn more about the transformation zone. And then also we have our contact information here. So if you're interested in learning more about the State Systemic Improvement Plan or any of the tools that we've shared with you today, feel free to reach out to Ashley Cook or myself, Amanda Waldrop. And you can you can see there's a link there as well to the State Systemic Improvement Plan webpage, and there's a QR code that will take you there where you can also find out more information about the SIP as well. So thank you so much for joining us today.